we're living in a very exciting time. We are living in a time of unprecedented change. And also, it's one of those periods in history where things just seem to be happening faster and faster and faster. You know, change and the way that things move, and trends in particular, are never circular. They are cyclical. They're more kind of oval in their shape, which means that there's a point always where you're going through this arc where things seem to be moving quite slow. And then suddenly everything seems to speed up as you move around a corner. And we're going through one of those corner points at the moment where suddenly everything is moving so fast. And change is happening so fast that most of us haven't even realized just quite what we've been through over the last few years, or quite how much the world around us has maybe changed, and the impact that it's had. I've been doing a lot of work, I don't know why recently, but on studies involving the workplace and the future of work. It suddenly seems that everyone wants to understand that. And it's often from an HR perspective and a leadership perspective. So a lot of the large corporates I deal with are increasingly asking me, you know, what is the future of the workplace? And I could talk about that for hours. I won't, because it's off topic. But one of the interesting things that we've learned recently, of course, is that we now have a whole generation of men, for example, who no longer feel that they are put on this planet in order to be a breadwinner for a family. Their raison d'etre is no longer to be a family breadwinner. They've actually changed their idea of what it is to be a man, what manhood represents, but also what their future might hold. Now, if I'd gone to my father and said something like that 20 years ago, Dad, I really don't think it's all about raising, kind of looking after my family, or that my focus needs to be on providing food for my family, but I wouldn't even have been able to finish that sentence. I would have been clouted round the head. And if you think about your father and your grandfather, and I'm deliberately excluding women because the majority of them wouldn't have worked in most of our families 50 years ago or 60 years ago. It was mainly still men who worked. Women stayed at home. They did a different type of job. That's the changes that we've been through in a very short period of time. And that sense, I think, of how our sensibility changes within generations is hugely important. And I want to touch on that both now and then also in the panel discussion later. This is David Rowan. He's the editor of Wired in the UK, Wired magazine. Everything is up for grabs now. Technology is evolving so quickly, and consumer and business strategies have to keep up. Now, I would argue that actually, I think most of the time the consumer is keeping up really well. That actually it's business that needs to do the keeping up. That most of the time the consumer is ahead of us. They're just waiting for the next new thing. They've already downloaded the latest app. They've already got the latest software version on their home computers. It's businesses that are struggling and that aren't actually normally up to date and aren't actually thinking about the way the consumer world or the consumer environment is working. We are, I think, all aware, however, that we're living increasingly in an environment in which technology is seen as a source of optimism. It's seen as a source of massive growth, of funding growth. Hence, we have tech hubs, we have tech centres, whether it be the one in Shoreditch, or whether it be Cambridge, or whether it be gaming centres in Scotland, here, around the UK, where we see these centres of growth that focus on technology and technological development, and not just software, of course, also on hardware. But that sense, I think, of how we are as a culture obsessed with technology is also one of the key points here. Because it's still so new for many of us, it's something that we're at the obsessive kind of angle at now. We obsess about technology. It totally focuses us. For most of us, we've begun to understand that if our business isn't tech-focused, we don't have a business. When I started off in 2000, I remember very clearly, this is obviously pre-Apple iPad, pre-Apple iPod, pre-Apple iPhone, speaking to a professional audience about the importance of Apple and also about the importance of phone, not knowing that Apple would make a phone, and talking about the importance of mobile and the importance of how mobile was going to change the way that we did business. And I would have an audience of professionals who would sit there kind of shaking their head going, oh no, I'm really sorry, but I'm a business executive, I'm very busy. And when I step away from my desk, I don't want to answer a phone. I'll pick up a phone when I'm there. But I'm far too important to take a call when I'm away from my desk. That was the prevailing business attitude about 10 years ago. And could you imagine doing business like that now? That kind of attitude, that your phone sits on your desk and that's when you answer a phone? I mean, for most of us, the phone is the last thing we touch at night when we go to bed, and it's the first thing we touch in the morning when we wake up. Now, I think that's pretty sad when you're in bed. I think there are quite a few other things you could be touching. But sadly, no, we are obsessed. Younger generations are not so obsessed, believe it or not, because for them technology is just like the air that we breathe. It's just there. You don't obsess about electricity. You just turn on the light switch, it's just there. That's the way a younger generation thinks about technology. But we are currently in this transition stage. We're in the obsession stage. So it's all about the next app. It's all about the next mobile device. It's all about whether it moves from 3G to 4G. It's also about e-commerce, m-commerce, and all these kind of various things. Because, of course, it's all going mobile. And I think the important thing here, and again, this is something that Matt has already picked up on, we live in what we now call an age, the trader age, which is we have all become buyers and sellers. So for us, the collapsing that we've noticed over the last 10 years is really the concepts that we used to have, that we used to rely on, things like B2B. Do you remember that expression, B2B, and B2C? They were relevant in the 21st century because we are all buyers and sellers, and we are all, in fact, consumer-facing. And the more that we think that we are B2B or B2C, and those two markets are totally different, the less likely we are, I believe, to have success or to succeed in the 21st century. Because, of course, that's really the critical issue, isn't it? That's where we are now. We're in the 21st century. And unless our thinking and our tactics and our strategies are actually 21st century focused, then we're in the wrong century. So the first question I'd like you to bear in mind as you go through today is, am I approaching this conference with the 21st century mindset? And am I thinking what it means to be a business, and hopefully a growing and successful business, at the start of the 21st century, not at the lag end of the 20th? So is your business fit for purpose in the 21st century?